Hey, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. What I want to talk to you guys about today is jig fishing in the wintertime. I'm going to break it down into two categories. You know, we all fish such different bodies of water. We'll break it down into one jig type or jig style for your reservoirs or your highland lakes, that style of lake, clearer water maybe, deeper water, that sort of thing. And then your shallower, grassier lakes or river systems, your tidal systems or river systems, whatever it may be. Starting with the reservoirs, the number one jig that I'm going to be throwing in the reservoirs is a football in the wintertime. Generally stick to the lighter weights, but if the fish go deep, I'll follow them down with a half or up to a 1 ounce. But given a choice, I'm going to start with a 3/8. It allows me to fish lighter line and not have those fish shake the bait. So talking a little bit about the specific footballs that I throw, the Dirty Jigs finesse football or the HP football. And basically the difference between those, here's a finesse football. It's a round bend hook. It's a light wire hook. I'm able to get away with throwing some really light line with that. The HP is more of an EWG style hook, a rounded style hook. Little bit stouter wire. If I'm getting into bigger fish, I'll step up to that hook so that I've got a stronger hook set. I can put more pressure on the fish, not get bent out. But I also have to step up my line a little bit, which in the wintertime can be a real downside. Talking more about these jigs, colors, I keep my colors really simple. Basically the two that I like to throw are going to be Go-To, which is like a green pumpkin brown kind of a color, and then this one's Supermat brown, which is my namesake color, a color I really like. It's a brown and purple with some cinnamon in it. Just very common. These are basic colors, you know, very simplistic, very natural colors, and then you can accent them with your trailer. In terms of trailer, there are some things there that I do that might be a little bit different than other people. I break my trailers into two categories, and I completely change with my weather conditions. And basically what that is on my sunnier days, or in clean, really clean, clear water, I'm gonna throw double tail grubs or something like a paca, you know, a paca chunk, something that's gonna have a lot of flash, a lot of movement. And the reason for that, at least in my mind, is I don't always think that we're imitating crawdads. You know, a lot of the time I think we're imitating baitfish or bluegill or whatever it may be. But on those bright sunny days, especially in clean water, you've got a lot of reflection. The baitfish are gonna have flash on them. You know, everything is reflecting light. And because of that, I'll throw these trailers that have a lot of movement. You get a lot of flash out of the glitter in them, but also just that movement in general is going to be shifting light around. And that's very natural on those bright sunny days. On cloudy days, however, or if my water gets really murky, once that happens, I completely stop and I switch over to more of like a beaver style trailer. Just a very dead action, a very neutral trailer. And the reason for that is I still get the color that I want, but I'm not getting a lot of that flash and a lot of that movement, a lot of light reflection. And I think that better simulates what's really going on in the water. The bait fish on a cloudy day don't have a lot of flash. They're not giving off a lot of light. Even though they're still moving, there's not that reflection. So I try to imitate that by using a very dead action trailer instead of having a lot of movement and a lot of light. So I keep it pretty simple there. Either a beaver style trailer or a double tail style trailer, almost always paired up to a football. Occasionally I'll go to a pitchin style head, you know, like your Arky style head. And that just is that depends on cover. There are certain lakes where I prefer that head in the wintertime, but it just has to do with how much cover you're trying to come through. So that's how I treat those reservoir style lakes. Going into your shallower water, places where we're flipping, pitching, maybe they have grass, generally a little bit dingier watercolors. Then I'm gonna go into my Flippin jig. Flippin jig, let me grab a couple of these. That's a Flippin style head, more of a pointed style head, comes through cover better, especially grasses. With those, I'm gonna go with a stouter hook. Again, generally it's dingy water, shallow water. So in those places, I can get away with that bigger hook. Now, you don't necessarily need a monster hook this time of year because you've got cooler water temperatures. So your fish are a lot less active. So even when you hook a big fish, they tend to not pull anywhere near as hard as they're gonna be pulling in the summertime. So you can get away with the lighter hook if you want to. But sometimes in those flipping applications, I'll still go with that big heavy hook. Color-wise, a little bit different. If it's clean water, I'm gonna go with something like a go-to or a green pumpkin craw kind of a color. If that water starts staining up, I'm gonna go to more of a black blue or a black blue chartreuse, that sort of a thing. Now trailer-wise, I do basically two things. One is going to be that more of a dead action trailer, a beaver style trailer, just like before. One, because you're not going to have a lot of light reflection in that murkier water, but two, and more importantly, when you're going in and out of cover, if you're throwing a double tail grub or a packer or something like that, it's going to tend to hang on that cover a lot more than a dead action trailer. The other thing that I'm going to do is throw pork. I throw pork a lot in the wintertime. Everybody has their own favorite chunk. For me, it's an Uncle Josh Phantom Craw. I just can't beat this thing. What I like about it is it's an actual, like, true crawdad shaped trailer. It's got actual shape to the claws. Whether that matters or not, I get a lot of confidence out of that. So that's the trailer that I use. Just slide that guy on. That's what I'm going to be flipping in the wintertime, especially when that water gets really cold. That is such a deadly, deadly bait. Again, it's a fairly dead action bait. You know, on the fall, it's going to have some movement, but generally, you get good float out of the claws, but they're not flopping around. They don't have a ton of action, but it's just a great crawdad profile. One other thing that I do that a lot of other people don't do, and I don't have one with me at the moment, but what I'll do is take a jig like this. You can see that I have a little bit of chartreuse in it. What I'll do before I put this chunk on is I'll actually take a double tail grub or a Senko, something like that, in a bright chartreuse, and I'll cut a section of that Senko out, say 3/4 of an inch or an inch, and I'll put that on and completely fill the hook shank before I put on my pork. What that does is when you have the actual body of your jig, it's just got this big chartreuse center, a big chartreuse core. The fish seem to just pick it up from a little bit farther away. Rattles, of course, do the same thing. A rattle is just allowing you to broaden the amount of area where the fish are aware of your bait. If it's really murky water, I will use a rattle, but generally I avoid them. I feel like I get consistently bigger bites when I fish a natural jig without a rattle, but that comes down to preference. And we don't have, here in California, we don't have muddy water that much of the year. You know, it's December right now, we've got 6-inch viz, something like that. Sometimes it'll get worse than that, but generally we've got pretty good watercolor, so we don't have to use them. But that chartreuse will make a big difference. Especially, I've found it helps on largemouth and stained water, but in clear water it really helps with smallmouth as well. So that's my approach to winter jig fishing. You know, equipment wise, I use lighter rods than normal. I'll go a full power lighter than normal, and I'll downsize my line. If I'm in the wintertime, in the summertime, if I'm using 15-pound line, in the wintertime, I'm gonna go down to 12, maybe even 10. Again, you don't have to fight the fish. They're not pulling as hard, so you can really step down your gear to help you get those extra bites throughout the day. So hopefully that gives you some help. If you like the video, feel free to subscribe to the channel, follow us on Facebook, follow us here on YouTube. We'll see you soon. Second retrieve is very erratic. This one, we're gonna work the bait and then we're gonna rip it, but we're gonna, rather than like a sharp snap, we're gonna really pull the bait.